Blackburn's academy. So, you know, they're technically better, athletically, so much more powerful and sharper and quicker than we were back, you know, 15 years ago. So there are different types of mentalities, but you can definitely see the standout ones in the squad for sure.
But do you think you were born with this drive, this hell bent on winning? Or is that genetic, or was there something in your childhood? There's often an older brother in the picture I've found with people I interview, but I don't know if that was the case with you. When did it first show itself with you?
I think really, I go back to when, you know, my dad used to take me to and from games, and you know, I remember sitting in the car and he's sort of dissecting the game, and before the game he's telling me, you know, you need to be aggressive, you need to be strong, you need to communicate well, do the simple things, and you know, do the simple things, you look a good player. And I remember sitting in the car and going through game after game with my dad and analysing games, and I just loved it that much, and I wanted to please him so much, and not prove him wrong, but I know he wanted it so much from me as a young boy, and we was a Blackburn fan, and we used to go on to the games, and my dad used to carry me over the turnstiles when I was a young kid, and you wanted it that much that it meant that much to me.
That's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure, but then on the flip side of that, people say, well, you know, is that too much pressure? But on the flip side, I'll say, well, if there wasn't that much pressure, would I have been as focused and as ambitious as I was as a kid? I'm not so sure. Maybe I would have had it, but maybe not as much. So just at a young age, I wanted it so bad, and people used to, I know, you know, people used to say to me, well, what are you going to do? You're not going to play football. You're not going to make it as a footballer. 1 in 1,000, 2,000 make it. And I was like, but that's what I'm going to do. Yeah, it was, I think it's from my upbringing, really.
Sir Alex, back in 2012, famously said of you, he's definitely a future captain, no doubt about that. I said from the minute he came to us that I thought there was something about the boy. I suppose when Sir Alex says something like that, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Whether or not you're made of that stuff, he makes you feel as if you are.
Yeah.
How did it affect you?
I think back then it's really difficult when you're young. You're a bit naive, and you listen to things, but you don't really take notice of things that much. And you know, you just want to play football as a young kid. You're not really thinking about, you know, what people are thinking, what people are saying, and how people are reacting to your performances or whatever. You're not really interested. So back then it wasn't really, you know, I didn't really think too much about it. And I remember he talked about the Duncan Edwards thing after a game, and everyone at the time, it blew up. It was a big story, and everyone was saying, how would that impact you going forward? And such a you know, comments like that from the great man himself, and it didn't really impact me. But obviously, the older you get and the wiser you get, and the more you realise how much that did impact you when you was younger, you do realise it a little bit more. But you know, I've got to be honest, as a young kid, it didn't really affect me too much. It wasn't something that I was like, I've got to prove to people now that I can live up to that expectation. And you know, I think for you know, I don't think I ever captained United, but for one reason or another, I think it was one of them where I just at the wrong place at the wrong time. I maybe picked up a little niggle just when I was getting going, and yeah, it was difficult. And of course, I would have absolutely loved it. Would have been a dream to put that armband on for Man United, absolute dream, because you know, it's a special club with special people at the club, and you know, I owe a lot to Sir Alex Ferguson and the people that gave me the chance and really took the time and invested the time to make me the player I was. And yeah, I owe them a lot.
Just listening to you, and particularly talking about your injuries, I interviewed this Grand National winning jockey, and he said to win a race, you haven't got to be lucky so much as you've got to not be unlucky.
Yeah.
And I know they're kind of the same thing, but they're subtly different. It just struck me you just got a bit unlucky.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it, I was unlucky, but I've also, you know, lived the dream, and I've played with players and played with managers and played for clubs that I never dreamt about playing for. I only dreamt about playing for, and you know, I've got to be thankful for the career I did have, and you know, I look back now with so many fond memories, but there are certain times when I do look back with a little bit of hurt and pain and suffering a little bit the fact that I couldn't get out on the pitch as much as I would have liked, especially towards the latter end of my career, and for no fault of my own. It was for no fault of trying. I literally left no stone unturned. I gave absolutely everything I could just to be out on the pitch. All I wanted to do was play football. I was just like a little kid at 28, 30 years old. I just wanted to play football with my mates. That's all I wanted to do. And when somebody has something ripped away from them that they can't do, it's bloody hard, and it's difficult to deal with. And that's when mentally it was a tough time and to get through it. But listen, I look back now and I look back at the Premier League trophy I have at the replica in my house, and the caps that I had for England, and to represent your country at 2 World Cups and Euros was something that kids can only dream of. And I look back and I sometimes give myself a pat on the back. And as footballers, you don't have time to really look back and reflect when you're in it and you're involved in it. And there's a game Saturday, there's a game Wednesday, you're on internationals. You don't have time to reflect. You don't have time to look back at games and really analyse and dissect your performances or whatever. But when you finish and you have some time off, you can really understand that how hard you worked and where you got to is a great achievement, and I do that now. But when I first finished, I found that really difficult to do.
You must empathise with somebody like Mason Mount, and there's countless other gifted players in football. Some never get past the age of 18 because of an injury. But do you speak to Mason about it?
I don't. Obviously I've seen him at Chelsea, and he's when we signed him, I thought, what a signing that is. An unbelievable talent and brilliant player for Chelsea. He was in the England team, and it's just not quite happened yet, just because of obviously little niggles he's picked up. And then just as he's getting a run of games and he's looking confident and fit, he'll pick up another one. And listen, I've been there. I know how tough it is. I know exactly his thought process, what he's going through, and you automatically. I used to think, God, what are people going to think? I'm injured again. I've done my knee, but for me, it was only my knee. It was literally, I think I had one muscle injury throughout my career. One muscle injury throughout my career is an incredible achievement, to be fair. It was just my knee, and I couldn't change the pathology of my knee. It was what it was. I tried everything I could. Towards the latter end of my career, I was getting, injections just in the cubicle in the toilet, just 30 minutes before kick-off, just to play, and that's where I was at, because I was wanting to play. But I can sympathise for Mason, absolutely I can. And I always say that if people ever want to reach out to me and just to unload on the things that they're thinking, because people don't get it, their friends won't get it, the family doesn't get it, they don't understand because they haven't lived it, they're not going through what he's going through. And listen, he's a wonderful player, and I'm sure, and I'm really sure now he's back in the team and he's fit. I'm sure that we'll see the best of Mason Mount, and hopefully he can finish the season off strong and have a really good pre-season, and we'll see the best of him next season.
There are different ways of winning and different winning feelings, and I was very moved reading about what you said about when you'd been out for ages and ages, an injury, and then I think Harry Maguire was injured, so you were going to play, you were going to come back, and just how much that meant to you.
Oh, it gives me goosebumps now thinking about it, because it was the first time that my kids were in the crowd and watching, when they could understand that Daddy was playing football. And I've been out for 12 months, and I had an absolute torrid time of operations and rehab, and just when you think you're back on the grass, you have another setback, and you're out again, and you're thinking, where do I turn? When's this going to end? When am I going to get a little bit of luck just to play the game that I love so much? And yeah, just to be able, I didn't care about the performance that game. I didn't care how bad I was going to be that game. It sounds awful to say. I just wanted to be on the pitch, and to walk out Old Trafford again with your family in the stand which just meant everything to me. And I remember it was quite, after the game, it was quite emotional, and I was like choking up after the game, just because it meant that much to you, because you just wanted to be on the pitch with your mates playing football, and for your family to see more than anything, for memories. And but I remember that I got through the game and I played really well, and we lost the game 1-0. But I almost knew in the back of my mind that I walked into the changing room after the game, and everyone's high-fived. Even though we lost, everyone was like so complimentary and saying like, brilliant, you've not played in 12 months, best player on the pitch, blah blah blah. But I sat there with my towel over my head, and I thought, this is coming to an end. I just knew it was like the end, that I was really struggling, even though like I got through the game, like it was more adrenaline, like even just to pass the ball, like I was struggling. I just couldn't carry on really. I was just emotionally just drained, physically just drained, and mentally drained of everything.
So what do you do with all this drive and all this love of the game now? What's next for you?
Well, listen, when I first obviously finished, I was unsure what I wanted to do. I went down a director's course, which I've enjoyed, to be fair, but you know, I got in touch with Nick Cox, the academy director at Man United, and asked him if I could come in with the 18s and just help out and just to see things and see how I felt about the coaching aspect and side of things. And the more I was there, the more I enjoyed it, the more I loved to be on the grass with the 18s and watching how the manager and the assistant, you know, set the team up. And you know, when you see the game a lot differently now to as you were as a player. You don't just watch a game of football anymore. You really study it and analysing it. And you know, my ambition and my passion for being out on the grass and coaching and that side of the game grew and grew. And I love watching players come through and develop. I love seeing young kids training with the first team and having a chance, and any team really. I don't care whether it's Liverpool, Arsenal, Man United, Man City. I love to watch and see young players come through and develop. And that's the route I want to go down. I took my A licence, finished my A licence last year. I'm currently on the Pro licence, which has been really exciting. Really good networking opportunities with the people that are on there. And you know, my ambition, my goal is to be a coach and not to distant future, hopefully, to manage. And I always say, I don't think you can be just a coach or just a manager. You have to be both these days. So I don't think it matters which route you go down, a head coach or a manager. You're both. You can't just be one or the other. And you know, that's just as a player when I was younger at Blackburn coming through, and I wanted it so much. Then you know, I feel like a kid again. That you know, it excites me. That the prospect and the challenge of getting to that stage and that level excites me. And that's what I want to do. It's something I'm passionate about.
But no one's going to bet against you succeeding, Phil. So look, thanks for that. That's brilliant.
No problem. Thank you very much.
That was Phil Jones, and what a pleasure it was to have him in our winners' enclosure. Thanks to him. Thanks to you for listening. I'll be back tomorrow at 11 o'clock. It's just coming up to 2. Layla Nathoo's in next for Match On.
The voice of the UK. This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
Adrian, thanks so much. It's 2 o'clock. I'm Layla Nathoo. I am in for Match On. All week we are live in Westminster. Today we have a very lovely spin class coming up. Lots to get into with them, including Donald Trump, predicting the unpredictable, the difference between a policy pause and a climb down. But first, let us get the latest news with Al Tansley.
Thanks, Layla. Good afternoon. The EU has put retaliatory tariffs against the US on hold after Donald Trump paused tariff hikes against all countries except China for 90 days. Stock markets around the world have rebounded in response. In London, the FTSE 100 is up about 4%. Daniel Lippman is a White House reporter at Politico. He told 5 Live market volatility has made the president change course.
Trump himself admitted yesterday that the reason that he backed down was that the markets were going a little yippy, as he said. He did not want a depression on his hands, and so you saw the bond market start to seize up, and there was very worrisome signs about investors' faith in U.S. Treasuries, and so that would have led to much higher prices for Americans trying to buy a car or a house.
The BBC's been told the government has offered to buy the coal that keeps steel production going in Scunthorpe on behalf of British Steel's Chinese owners. The company has been warning for days that the raw materials needed to keep its 2 blast furnaces operational are running out. These people in Scunthorpe shared their thoughts on the plant's future.
Without the steelworks, you lose part of the town, really.
It'd just be a ghost town if the steelworks go.
It's not a popular opinion. Environmentally, I think it'd be much better for the town for health reasons if the steelworks shut down. It would be nice if we could use that land to create as many jobs for something more environmentally friendly.
The steelworks should be renationalised, should never have been sold in the first place.
Officials at the Cabinet Office have been told almost a third of jobs are being cut or moved to other departments as part of civil service reform. The changes to the department, which supports the work of the Prime Minister, will see more than 2,000 staff affected. Ministers say it will save £110 million a year by 2028. A Romanian man has been arrested by counter-terrorism police investigating a fire at a delivery depot near Birmingham last July. The Metropolitan Police say the 38-year-old was detained at Stansted Airport last month on suspicion of assisting a foreign intelligence service. He's been released on bail. And scientists mapping a tiny part of a mouse's brain have found it to be so complex it resembles a galaxy. The study, which mapped more than 500 million connections, has been published in Nature magazine. That's the news. Molly Stevens has the sports.
Thank you, Al. We'll head straight to Georgia as the opening golf major of the year, the Masters, is underway. Our golf correspondent Ian Carter is watching the early stages of the action at Augusta.
And Danny Willett out on the course, the 2016 champion, with a birdie at the second to move to 1 under par, and that's good enough for a share of the very early lead. Jonathan Vegas, Mike Weir, another former champion, Zach Johnson, another former champion, along with Michael Kim and Chris Kirk and Willett, all leading the way at 1 under par in glorious conditions.
We'll continue to bring you updates from Ian and the team on 5 Live throughout the day, with commentary on Sports Extra from 8 o'clock this evening, and before then you can follow the action as it happens on the BBC Sport website. British tennis #1 Jack Draper is out of the Monte Carlo Masters. He lost his third round match in 3 sets against Spain's Alejandro Davidovich Fokina. In Rugby Union, Ireland have made 3 changes for Saturday's Women's Six Nations game against champions England. Brittany Hogan returns to the back row, Dorothy Wall is recalled to the pack, and Emily Lane is in at scrum half. Fly half Slakey George has been ruled out of Wales's match against France with an ankle injury. Centre Kaylee Powell moves to 10 in place of her.
Football, a game of passion, rivalry and loyalty. But decades ago, beneath the cheers and the chants lay a different kind of warfare called hooliganism.
On a match day, everyone was your enemy.
We'll uncover the brutal, bloody battles where punching below the belt was a way of life.
It was just a day of mayhem.
Gangster presents Hooligans.
They were destroying the football club. Mickey may well.
Listen first on BBC Sounds.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
The voice of the UK. What we need is the cultural change in society.
And craving leadership now, and craving someone to stand up to that bully.
Just got to hang in there, look after each other. Layla Nathoo. Listen on BBC Sounds.
Until 4 o'clock on the programme today, lots of people are insisting.
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, you know? They were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid.
That was President Trump, who's been trying to explain why he pulled back from imposing the most punishing of his tariffs. He hasn't backtracked, though, when it comes to China, and neither has Beijing. We will ask what will come of this deepening trade war between 2 economic giants. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, says she hasn't backed away from properly investigating grooming gangs.
There hasn't been a change. There's a lot of misinformation about this, and sadly a lot of party political misinformation about this.
There's been some concern among Labour MPs about how the government's handled this. We will speak to one. The Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, is standing her ground on her TV viewing habits.
In the same way that I don't need to watch Casualty to know what's going on in the NHS, I don't need to watch a specific Netflix drama to understand what's going on. It's a fictional series. It is not a documentary.
I'm sure you can guess which show she is referring to, and also why conspiracy theorists can't stop going back down the rabbit hole.
The report was a hoax, but what was so disturbing about it was how many people thought it was real. The memos went all the way up to the president. Many in America still think it's real today.
We will speak to writer Phil Tinline, who tells us the story of how a fake report from the 1960s still refuses to go away. As ever, you can get in touch with us. Text us, 85058 is the number. You can WhatsApp us, call us, leave us a voice note on 08085 909 693. Perhaps you are a conspiracy theorist. You have a special theory that you're still believing in. Perhaps there was one that was debunked and you stopped believing it. So let us know, as ever. 85058 is the number. WhatsApp us, 08085 909 693. Now, MPs might be already on their Easter holiday. Parliament has broken up for recess, but that does not mean politics goes away. In fact, the news agenda is pretty busy. Damien Grammaticus, our political correspondent, is here to bring us up to date. Damien, hello to you.
Hi, Naila. Yeah, it's pretty packed.
It is. Well, I mean, it's never a quiet day, really, is it? So, lots to get through. Some lines that have come in this afternoon. Let's talk about steel first, because the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has been at Doncaster Sheffield Airport. He was asked about British steel. Let's listen to what he said.
Well, we're in talks in relation to Scunthorpe. I know from being at Scunthorpe just how important that is, not just for the workforce, but for the community more generally. And we have, demand for steel likely to go up, not down. So it's very important we do everything we can. And that's why I've said all options are on the table, because I know just how important this is.
What does he mean, Damien? All options are on the table?
Nationalisation, in a word. I mean, there are other things on the table too. What is on the table at the minute is trying to avoid that, actually. So government's offered Jinye, the big Chinese company that now owns this site, still called British Steel, £500 million to help it transform the old blast furnaces into more efficient ones. They haven't accepted that. They say they're losing money hand over fist every day, £700,000 a day of losses. So they are thinking about what they want to do, and in the meantime the clock is ticking and it's getting pretty close to the deadline. And the deadline here is defined by the fact that those furnaces, they work at incredible temperature, they have to keep burning. If they go out, that's pretty much shutdown time. Can't really start them again very easily. So the issue there is the government is offering to buy the coal, the coking coal needed to keep firing them, because you have to put an order in because it has to come from overseas. It takes 45 odd days to get here. So the government is saying it's prepared to do that to give more time while it's talking. At the same time, there's a question too about you also then have to order scrap iron and stuff to put in there to produce the new steel. So that's another deadline that will be coming too. So there's all sorts of things being talked about in the background, but essentially, will the government nationalise it, or will it end up with some sort of a deal to try to keep it going?
Is this one step towards nationalisation, the government coming in and buying the raw materials, because presumably they're doing that because the Chinese owners don't want to or can't afford to? So is this one step in that direction? Well,
I think the Chinese owners seem to have been saying, look, we don't think it's viable the way it is at the minute. So the government is saying, well, as a stopgap, we will buy a bit of time by putting this money forward and showing that we are committed to making this work. It also gives them time to try and talk to other people and see if there's any other, commercial buyers out there, and that's the preferred option. But certainly, we've had the local MP saying nationalisation, he believes nationalisation would be, the government would go down that route if necessary. Strategic industry, a lot of jobs. Other parties too also saying that they think nationalisation should be looked at.
Okay, steel is obviously one of the sectors that's been hit by Trump's tariffs, and actually the ones that haven't gone away, because they're still in place on aluminium and steel, 25%. The pause, the pause on the wider pause hasn't affected the UK, has it?
No, so we had the base level, which was 10%, which is already a lot, and the pause just means everyone goes to 10%, unless you're on the sort of naughty list and the bad list.
Which is China.
China, I think Mexico and Canada too. It's the countries that had already imposed their own retaliatory tariffs, particularly China. I mean, China has now, 125%, I think it is, tariff. So there's a huge issue there. We sit on 10%, so kind of not different, but in fact, in a way, what's happened is that others have come down to the level we're at. So now, if you're an American buyer, I guess, there's no advantage coming to the UK compared to going to the EU, to an EU supplier. So in a way, we're kind of, not quite as well off as we were yesterday, but it's still, the big picture is still 10% tariffs. It's serious.
Yeah, so I mean, we shouldn't lose sight of that at all, and the implication for that could be huge, and certainly the implications globally. But does it kind of undermine what the government was saying before, which is, oh look, this is evidence the fact that we got a slightly lower rate than other countries because we've been pragmatic in our approach? That certainly was a bit of a message, wasn't it, from the government? Do you think this kind of undermines that? And actually, if everyone's now at the baseline, does it suggest that President Trump's not prepared to go anywhere below that, which is what Keir Starmer hopes to do with a trade deal, right?
So the government says, look, this our approach is the right one. Be calm, take the long view, look ahead, don't react with your own tariffs, because that will just harm ourselves. So this vindicates our approach. You could take a different view, which is to say, well, what's forced President Trump's hand? Well, it's the turbulence we've seen. What's contributed to that? Well, it's the countries that retaliated, introduced their own tariffs, there's threat of a tariff war. But equally, you could also listen to what the American administration is saying, which is that they've had countries knocking at their door, all wanting to do deals. That's a good thing. They're giving this pause for time to do that. You might believe that spin, you might believe the other spin, which is that they saw the markets and the bond markets and their borrowing costs as a government, and they thought, and then they put a pause on it.
We can ask our panel of spin doctors coming up. Where are the trade talks up to, briefly, Damien, on that? I mean, are we getting any sense of time frame?
No, in a word. I mean, they were kind of moving along, we think, or they were kind of happening in the background. But the whole thing with the Trump imposing his tariffs has kind of thrown all the balls up in the air. So it's not clear that what the time frame would be, except that the U.S. administration now saying, I think today, they're saying, or they think they can have maybe a couple of deals done pretty quickly. Not saying who those are, but the rest maybe within 80 days. Obviously that gets in under Donald Trump's 90-day, pause on his tariffs.
Okay, can we turn back to the UK briefly, because there's still a lot going on here. We had a statement from Jess Phillips, the Home Office Minister, on Tuesday before Parliament broke up, about the government's approach to grooming gangs. Where are we on this? What did they say, and why was the Home Secretary asked about this morning?
Yes, so let me just rewind. January, the government came out and said its approach to grooming gangs would be to hold these local inquiries, and possibly 5 of them around the country. I think they named one area, Oldham was likely to have one, and that they would start work on those. What we got this week, just as MPs were about to go off on their break, Jess Phillips, the minister, stood up and said that they were going to take a flexible approach, and that would mean the £5 million available could also be used by areas if they wanted to come forward and ask for money for local victims, panels, other local sort of assessments, and that locally led audits, she said, of handling of historic cases. Now, opposition parties have cried foul and said that this is government rowing back on what it was saying, stepping away from even the local...
Because there was pressure for a national inquiry.
Yes, exactly, and that's what we've heard again today. So the Conservatives, the Reform saying that, their Conservative leader Kemi Baynott saying she's shocked the government is stepping away from what it already promised. There needs to be a national inquiry that's a statutory inquiry that can force victims to come forward. What the government says is actually nothing has changed. It's always been in favour of supporting locally led inquiries, still is. This is another option, and anyway, the crucially important thing it says is that it's getting on with the recommendations from that. There was a long 7-year review. It's getting on with those. Previous government, it says, didn't do that, and it is also empowering the police to look into past cases, because that's what's crucial for victims for getting justice.
Do you think they're still under pressure on this issue? Because it was, it was a big issue a few months ago when they announced these local inquiries. It hasn't really gone away, the calls for a national inquiry. And then here they are being accused of watering down their response in the first place. I mean, do you think this is going to gather a head of steam?
That's harder to say. I think what certainly is the case is that as soon as this issue has come back again, as you say, those calls for a national inquiry have come back again. So clearly that's not going to go away, because there are certainly others who believe that that is the only way you can get to the bottom of what happened. I mean, some who say, look, why offer a local inquiry to a local authority who are the ones who may have been at fault? They won't want to mark, why let them mark their own homework? That's not going to get to the bottom of it. Equally, some talk, and I think you said you're going to talk to Labour MP, that Labour MPs in some of these areas feeling a bit of heat, perhaps locally, with local voices saying, are you rowing back on what you said you were going to do, what's going on, and kind of looking for answers.
government, as I say, saying no, nothing has changed at all. In fact, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, said that that was wrong, not wrong, just wrong, but fundamentally wrong to suggest that they were changing their approach.
Okay, really briefly, Damien, before we let you go, some news that's broken in the last hour or so. Big job cuts at the Cabinet Office, losing almost a third of its staff, so 1,200 jobs are going to go through redundancies and leavers not being replaced. Government means business about shrinking the size of the state?
Yes, we heard them say this a few weeks ago, that they want to shrink, I think, the costs of running government by, I think it was 15%, to save billions, I think it is. The Cabinet Office sits right at the heart of government. It's kind of the department that helps the central government coordinate everything. Civil service has grown in size enormously since before Brexit. So Brexit and the pandemic, taken on new functions, grown in size. Civil service unions saying be careful, because there's this big push to talk about AI, digitising government, moving jobs to the front line, to teachers and police. They're saying be careful, because if you do that, if you try and increase efficiencies, you can actually end up with a sort of worse outcome at the end in terms of being able to deliver policies.
Damien, thanks so much for bringing us up to date on that huge raft of story. Damien Grammaticus, our political correspondent, keeping an eye on everything going on despite Parliament not being here. Some quick breaking lines to bring you. We've just heard from the Defence Secretary, John Healey, who is in Brussels and has just opened a meeting of what is being described as the coalition of the willing in support of Ukraine. Let's have a listen to what he said.
There are 30 countries here today. 30 countries bound by a simple belief that peace is possible, and we must be ready for when that peace comes. That's why the work of this coalition is so vital. We're stepping up, we're serious, we're sending a signal to President Putin and to Minister Umerov and the Ukrainian people. We stand with you in the fight, and we will stand with you in the peace.
That was Defence Secretary John Healey. Now, it is time for our regular Thursday feature, when we get together some of politics' best former spinners together to spin their way through the news. Very, very pleased to have three distinguished guests here with me. James Snyder, Director of Strategic Communications for Labour when Jeremy Corbyn was leader. Afternoon, James.
Afternoon, lovely to be here.
Very nice to have you. Salma Shah was Special Advisor to to various Conservative ministers over 5 years. Hello, Salma.
Hello.
And Stuart Nicholson was former Head of Communications to Scotland's First Minister and a senior political spokesperson in the Scottish Government. Hello, Stuart.
Hello.
Well, great to have you guys. How are you?
Very well. Very well.
Getting into the Easter spirit yet?
Very much so, and the weather is nice. You can see the sky. It's lovely.
Any Easter egg hunts?
No, I'm just generally triggered by the news at the moment, so can't quite get into the Easter spirits.
Oh God, it's been postponed. Stuart, any more positivity from you?
The weather's nice here in Scotland, that's all I can say.
Oh God, we're all taking comfort in the clear skies.
Triggered by the news, but at least the weather's nice.
Oh no, it's all a bit doom and gloom, guys, come on. Okay, I was going to start with grooming gangs. Maybe we shouldn't talk about that as a little bit negative. Well, we should. I mean, I do want to start with them actually, because it seems a bit serious, but it is important. You heard Damien talk about the context. There was a promise to have these local inquiries. Then we had an update just before Easter recess, so this is a day that's known, isn't it, as Take Out the Trash Day. We get these announcements that perhaps the government wants a little bit less attention on. Obviously, we've had a massive global situation. Can we just have a listen to what Yvette Cooper said on the Today programme this morning, because she was asked about this. There was accusations from the Conservative Party that the government's promises had been watered down. Let's have a listen to what Yvette Cooper said this morning.
Not only are we continuing with the plans for local inquiries as we set out in January, that has not changed. We're also saying we will support areas that want to do more to work with victims and survivors. That has not changed. That is what we set out in January. But most crucially of all, we're supporting increased police investigations.
Okay, James, what do you make? I mean, where do you think, are they in a sticky situation over this?
Yes, it's a difficult situation. I mean, Yvette Cooper was extremely clear this morning, and they have to be unbelievably clear, otherwise people will jump all over the issue. And you know, first of all, this came about because a letter was sent to Jess Phillips. It took her a while to reply. This is last year, and then wrote quite a kind of tin-eared reply to the council talking about the local inquiries. So that was badly managed. And then, as you say, putting out a statement that seems a bit ambiguous or could be interpreted as a rowback on a day in which, if you were doing a rowback, that's the day in which you would do it, is a very bad look. So the government had to come out this morning and be extremely clear that no, they aren't rowing back on the commitments that were made earlier in the year. Now, for a lot of people, that commitment doesn't go far enough, and the amount of money and the type of inquiries are not what some people want to see. But the idea that what was put in place in January was going to be backtracked on was toxic, and so the government had to get much clearer than it had been on Tuesday.
But they're not even as far as where lots of people want them to be, right? So it's backtracking from a place that isn't even enough in certainly the eyes of the Conservatives and Reform.
Yeah, and more than that, I mean, I think they've made a mistake here by not. They've looked at the recommendations from the previous inquiry, and they've started to implement that, and that's good. But within that, there's setting up a commission on child sexual exploitation, and I think they should have fast-tracked that and then given that body the powers and the financing and the resources to do whatever investigation that body made up of experts thinks is the right thing to do. That, I think, would have not given a win to politicians who, mainly from the right, but not only from the right, who were acting in I would say, a pretty self-serving way, you know, who hadn't acted on the issue when they'd been in government or hadn't dealt with the report when it had come out, and most importantly, started to taking much more action on the issue.
Okay, Salma, I mean, I guess for anyone who's not up to speed with this, I mean, the issue is that there have been absolutely horrendous incidents of sexual abuse and exploitation, child sexual exploitation across the country, various different kind of individual cases involving like dozens of people and hundreds of victims, and there was a clamour for basically dots to be joined. Is there a sense in your eyes that the government is skirting around the issue, because there's a kind of racial dimension to this as well in terms of the perpetrators being mostly from South Asian origin and victims being white? Is there, I mean, how tricky territory is this for the government?
So I think the issue has always been that there has been a concern about the race of the perpetrators and whether that led to miscarriages of justice or indeed inappropriate or ineffective investigations. That's the entire reason there have been several inquiries into this issue.
Because the accusation is that people were kind of too scared to admit that or call that out or even identify.
Yeah, and there were a lot of victims, survivors, who were basically disbelieved about horrific things that had essentially happened to them. The question now is, and you know, this is spin class, so I actually agree with what James has said, is that you have to work out the logic. And spinning has a very sort of bad, it's got terrible connotations because it's seen as something that's bad, but actually what you're doing is you're trying to take a step back and work out actually what are the things that you need to address and what are purely political. So there are arguments that say that this is one of those issues that can be exploited by certain elements of, you know, political groups, and the government has to be really deft in terms of its handling to ensure that those communities that are affected by this retain trust in the institutions and the processes, because that is what's been lacking this far. So I think there is an element of independence that's required from politics, certainly. And there is a question about whether you do trust local authorities to be able to act in the best interests if they are going to be implicated in any of, you know, the outcomes or the findings. So I think the best thing that a spinner can do is exactly as James says, really look at what's in front of you and then be able to tell the story so that it can't be used up for political ends, as emotional as people get about it. And, you know, I'm not saying that Yvette Cooper should be dispassionate, but she should be focused on the outcome, which is how do you restore trust and obtain justice.
Stuart, what do you make of the criticism that basically Labour's in a bind over this because they're worried about their own local authorities and they're worried about their own voters? Stuart, have we lost you? Are you there?
Can you hear me?
I can. Did you hear me? Are you all right?
I'm clear.
Stuart might be having a tiny problem with his lines. I'm just going to let that be sorted out. James, I mean, I guess that question to you while we're waiting for Stuart to reconnect. Do you think this criticism that they're getting of basically this is all about votes, it's all about, you know, Labour local authorities, what part Labour councillors played in these investigations over time, and actually Labour voters on the ground, minority communities, traditionally Labour voters, that is one criticism, that they're shy of going as far as they should on this because they don't want to upset people?
So I'd divide that in two. I think on the voters, it's absolutely not the case, because you can see that this Labour Party has not minded at all being quite disparaging towards the interests of Muslim voters in particular, but also Bengali voters. If you looked at the comments made by Jonathan Ashworth and Keir Starmer during the general election. So I don't think it's focusing on those voters. There could be something to do with the councils, but I mean, I don't know, and none of us know. But I think more importantly than that, I mean, the victims of this, who are disproportionately working class girls, some boys, many of whom were in care, who this would not have happened to if they were, if they were middle class kids. And those people should be looked after by the Labour Party, and that should be a major focus as well. I think dividing it between as if all Muslim or all Pakistani origin voters are concerned with the issue in one direction, and all people who are concerned with child sex exploitation in the other direction just isn't the case at all. That's not what people are like up and down the country.
Stuart, I think we have you back.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello?
Stuart, are you there? Go on.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, tell us what you reckon. How's the government handling this?
Well, I think it's
Oh, Stuart, I'm so sorry. We've got you underwater sounding. I'm really sorry. We're going to have to try and get you back on a proper line really soon. Okay, guys, Salma, James, you're in here, the studio with me, so it's a little bit easier to talk to you. Can we talk about matters a bit closer to home for you as former advisors? Because Keir Starmer today has dismissed two of his longest-serving policy advisors. This is the policy unit in Downing Street. Perhaps a sign of growing frustration with the slow pace of government delivery. We're talking about him taking on the state. Now, these people are not household names, but I wonder what you reckon about two very long-serving policy advisors. They are Tom Webb, in case people know them, the Prime Minister's health advisor, Nick Williams, advisor on planning and infrastructure policy. They're two big areas, and areas where the government has gone big so far, and they've been with Labour for a long time since opposition. James, what does it say about where the government's at that two advisors are going?
Well, I think it's quite normal. I think most...
this soon into government?
Yeah. I think you have a big turnover around the year mark, and that's what we're getting towards. I think if you look at pretty much every administration, both of an opposition and of a government, you see big turnover around the first year, because the first team that comes in, then you bring in some new people to stabilise it. Different people get more powerful within that particular administration, and you see big changes. So it's hard to read that much into these particular changes, and they changed comms director last week as well. But this is quite normal. If you look back at the last few governments, you would have seen a similar kind of thing happen.
I mean, it sounds quite functional, doesn't it? But I mean, you must have like a special bond when you're an advisor to the Prime Minister, a minister. I mean, it sounds like,
Yeah, so James's answer is
heartbreaking.
Yeah, no, James's answer is the corporate answer. But it doesn't mean that it's wrong.
Shame, it's well the walk of shame, like down Downing Street.
It doesn't mean that it's wrong, but